here.
Did you take the IG?
Yeah, it's here.
Okay. Put the
Yeah,
stream.
we're live. Yeah.
Okay.
We are having slight technical difficulties. I see that this is okay. Here we go. All right, y'all. Thank you for rolling with us through those tech difficulties. This is our Tech Week, WhiteCon Week in the house here in Miami, Florida. Blacks, Innovation, Technology, and Entertainment. And as part of WhiteCon Week, we have partnered with JT Workspace on their Meet the Author event to showcase one of our partners, Naseed Gifted. He's a brother I've known for a minute. And he's so into STEM, he's into graphic comic books and making sure that we have heroes that represent our culture. So we're going to be talking about Jazen, one of his superhero characters that he has. So thank you so much for being here, Naseed.
No, thank you for having me. And also, this being my second year in a row being a part of WhiteCon Week, man, I'm super phenomenal. So if you haven't heard, just make sure you check out WhiteCon Week. We have a plethora of activities for the mind, body, and soul this year.
Indeed, for the mind, body, and soul. And before we get into our talk, I do just want to highlight some great things. Tomorrow, Tuesday, is our Overtown Day, where we highlight our historically black town, black part of Miami here. And we are showcasing our black businesses. We are getting into the history of what's going on. We've got an amazing farm that actually does a lot of farming and giving to our local restaurants underneath Dunn's Overtown Farm, underneath Chef Chris. So I just want to give her a little shout out. She does amazing work for the community and making sure that our community is fed and literally are learning. The kids are learning how to actually create their own crops and grow their own food. That's exactly what we need to be doing. We've got our kickoff party at the Cave. So we're really excited about that. And then, of course, the conference. That is Thursday and Friday at Manatech, downtown Miami. We're going to have amazing panelists, workshops. We have a gaming lounge. It is going to be fire. You do not want to miss it. So make sure you go to bycon.org and cop your tickets for ByCon Week and for the conference.
And what I was reading on the agenda, we got over 60 speakers this year?
Yeah, we've got over 60 speakers, so really excited. And they're coming from all over the United States. They represent some of the top Fortune 50 companies in the U.S. And we're also happy to have our title sponsor be Microsoft, our local sponsor be the Miami DDA. So thank you, everyone. We've got a lot of folks, community partners, vendor partnerships. We can't name them all, the Crockett Foundation, et cetera, but you'll see them on our website. We just thank everybody. This has been a true community affair who's really understood the importance of our mission of making sure that technology is accessible to all of us. And then we want to shout out our venue sponsor, Manatech. Man, they have been such a great community partner over the last couple of years, and being the venue partner for us in downtown Miami means so much. So thank you to Manatech and the community there for allowing us to bring ByCon downtown. So we're really excited about that as well. All righty. So boom, we're going to actually get to meet the author. Commercial breakdown. No, it's like, no, for real, it's going to be fire.
No, we got to acknowledge the sponsors, because without the sponsors, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be possible. I mean, I'm just excited that, JT Workspace is sponsoring this particular event. So, shout out to them and the curator and part owner and everything, for making this all happen, and just to encapsulate the first day of ByCon. We first day one of ByCon Week with this, meet the author with That's myself. Right. So,
Yeah, absolutely, Naseed. So we're really excited. So Naseed, you flew down from Jersey. You're a Jersey boy.
Yes.
I'm a Jersey girl, New York, New Jersey girl. So I like to always shout that out too. Though Miami is definitely my home now. People ask me all the time, when you come back to New Jersey, New York? I'm not. I love Miami.
Especially this time of year, right?
Especially this time of year.
Yes.
But Naseed, I wanted to talk a little bit about the inspiration for the book. You said you were inspired by your son. You wanted to ensure that he could read books that had superheroes that looked like him,
Yep.
especially as a young Black male. Can you just talk a little bit more about the importance of that, and then we'll get into the creation of the series?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone has an origin story. So for me, uh, I didn't start off as a graphic novel writer or author or anything. I was an engineer by trade who transitioned into education. But I had a very profound conversation with my son. We went to the movies. We saw Incredible Hulk, and the conversation was around superheroes.
Mm.
And when we talked about superheroes, he could name Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, and all that. The one thing he definitely didn't name was anyone that looked like him. So this was back in like 2008 or something like that. Initially, I got upset, and then I just set off on a journey to be able to change that paradigm. Where, nowadays you actually have more recognition of black superheroes and everything. But I want the word superhero to be able to resonate and generate images, because words generate images.
Absolutely.
And because they generate images, I wanted it to be able to generate an image that he could be familiar with, someone he can um, not only surrounded or inspired to be, or whatever the case may be, but look forward to kind of moving in his particular space and realm. So that was really my inspiration to to kind of get started. I mean, I was definitely a comic book collector in middle school,
Mm.
high school. I put down the comic books and did Saturday morning cartoons always, and anime and all of that stuff. But as far as this journey, it really started with that one conversation with my son, and then just kind of spiraled into we started developing these series. And now decided that because of the first series, we actually launched the second series, and now we actually have an animation adapted from the first series. So just excited about all of the things that has come from just having an idea of being able to change the paradigm of comic books and comic book creation.
Mm. I love that. And one of the things that you just said to me, which I thought, man, that's great, because I think sometimes we can get, for example, you said that when your son was saying naming all the superheroes, and none of them were black, and none of them looked like him, you were upset. A lot of people could wallow in that upsetness and be negative and just go out, but you decided to figure out a way to be the solution to the
Mhm.
problem that you saw. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what inside of you made you do that? Because that's not something that people normally do. We got
Yeah,
people out here who love to complain.
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah,
boy.
definitely,
Oh
definitely.
boy, they'll tell you anything, right? They love to complain, but they never come with you with solutions or actions or
Mhm.
anything that leads us to a more positive way of thinking and being.
Well, I mean, part of it is comes from, and I would say my education training. My education training is an engineer. Engineers are problem solvers, right?
Mhm.
So I saw a problem that needed to be solved. So I reverse engineered the problem of the lack of representation, as far as black superheroes, and went about trying to solve that problem. And what I did was I did a ton of research. I went to conventions, I went to comic cons, I went to all of these different, and didn't realize that there was a number of black artists out there that later on in life I would actually I aspired to work with.
Mm.
And one guy, Mashindo Kaumba, who's a phenomenal Afrofuturistic artist, and when I saw his work, I said one day I'm gonna work with him, as I was writing this story. So I mean, beyond that, I just kind of went, I was the writer, right? So I was writing at the time while I was married. My wife at the time was a flight attendant. So I'm in the house with two little children. And while I'm in there, I'm writing these stories, and I'm just writing. And, like people like Tyler Perry, who did like a 100 episode deal with Meet the Browns, that kind of like was my inspiration. I was like, okay, he could do a 100 episode deal. I need to write about 65 episodes of this particular story. So, I did that. And, while I was doing that, I'm still researching, still trying to find an artist, trying to, connect the dots and just try to make this thing that I had in my mind, become, something that was real. And in 2012, we launched the first book in the first series and just kept going from there. We got, positive response at New York Comic Con, and just kept going from there.
I mean, you say like you're just doing 65 episodes in a series, and you compared it to Tyler Perry, but you had a full-time job, and you have a full-time job as an educator, educating other people's children.
Mm-hmm.
You're currently an assistant principal. You're juggling your role there, as you said, also being sometimes a single father because your wife at the time was flying as a flight attendant and
Mm-hmm.
wasn't always in the house. So, brother, how did you do it?
Oh, I mean, well, I always late nights, early mornings, and weekends. That's really what it was. So I'm really strong on a philosophy that everyone gets 24 hours in a day, and make sure you maximize those 24 hours. So I would stay a little later. I just kind of I made sure I did everything, and I'm very routine. So I get up early. I may go to bed late, but I can be very goal driven.
Yeah.
And when I see something like and I'm always seeing something that is attainable, I'm working towards that. And like I do stuff like the checklist manifesto, and I take a piece of paper, I fold it into 8 little quadrants, and I put 3 most important things that I need to get done for that day. And when I get, as I'm scratching those things off, I got a bunch of these little papers that I put into a box. And that was really how I was able to kind of, knock these things out, bit by bit. I mean, one of the things, like even with the artwork, and I didn't have the money to finance the book, initially, but I knew if I broke it down into, one of the things for my mom, I learned, she used to put money on the bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she used to put a little bit on the gas, so they won't turn it off. So I kind of took that. So I put my book on layaway. So I paid about 5 pages at a time, and eventually. So while he was developing the first 5 pages, I will put my down payment on that, and then I will give him the feedback on the pages, and then just kind of kept doing that. So as the pages were being cranked out, I was able to get the money up for the next 5 pages and the next 5 pages, and then eventually, had a whole book, and that's what I was saying. Like with the research, I mean, I went to best-selling authors, and I just would ask them how would they do their writing room and stuff like that. Some people, they have this thing where they have to write 10, 15 pages in a day or whatever the case may be. Being I'm a math and engineering guy, this guy was like, all I do is write at least 1 page a day. And I was like, oh, 1 page a day, I could do that. So if you think of a comic is generally 24 to 28 pages. So you could write a comic in a month,
right.
And then, just kind of go on from there. But sometimes you get into a flow. So you don't just write 1 page, you write 2 and 3 pages. But if the goal is to write 1 page a day, even for those authors who are out there looking to get your project off the ground, if you write 1 page a day, at the end of the year, you will have 365 pages. And then, you could go into your editing process and everything like that. But I just kept going forward. And then after I completed the story, then I went back and I edited, and the fact that I know the end, I was able to add, like little breadcrumbs and stuff like that, because I know where the story was going and everything.
Okay, so there's like 3 different ways I want to go. I think I'm just going to pick one, which is the crowdfunding. And I'm going to actually grab one of these books just because I'm going to just show it here. In the back, you give a little special shout out to the people on Kickstarter who supported your vision, your dream of what you were doing, believed in the mission. And, I didn't count these, but these look like a good, maybe over 50 individual people's names that I see on here. Can you talk a little bit about creating your Kickstarter, what it was like to crowdfund, and truly this is a book of the community?
Yeah. So 2 things with crowdfunding. One, I heard about Kickstarter. I saw many people doing Kickstarter. I had to learn about Kickstarter. So this is with the research and, trial and error. The first Kickstarter I did, I failed. Right. I thought the whole philosophy, if you build it, they will come. And that's what I did. I built it and nobody came, but then I learned so much from that, about, your target amount, how you actually build a campaign around it. When you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, it's actually like running for office. You actually have to do all of the work ahead of time before the campaign even kicks off. So it's a 6-week campaign leading up until the actual Kickstarter launch date. And then once you get everyone involved and engaged in that, that's when everyone kind of gravitates to it, because no one looks to fund a project that nobody else is looking to fund, right? So you got to kind of like stack deck. So you get everybody to kind of chime in the very beginning. You and it's like a metrics, like where like how things go viral, right? So when things go viral, then other people are tuning in and trying to see what's going on.
Yeah.
So once you got 50 to 75% of your Kickstarter campaign funded, now other people are like, oh, let's see what this is about. And now other people start coming in. And then that's when the newsreels come in, and you get all of these different avenues of support. So, and that's where the whole community kind of come in. Initially, I'm a behind the scenes guy, and I never really, I'm talking a lot now, but I generally would like to just be the one behind the scenes and not, in front of the camera. But that didn't work. That didn't work. So, I always wanted the product to kind of speak for itself. And I mean, initially, especially when you don't have brand recognition, that didn't work. So I just pretty much, got out of my comfort zone, because that my comfort zone was to be behind the scenes and do, make things happen, but not be in the forefront. And then, once I changed that philosophy, things started moving. So the Kickstarter that and we were actually successful in 4 Kickstarters, but that first one, that first one was the biggest letdown. So they say fell early and fell often, right? And then that's what we did. We failed early on that one, but it was so many nuggets of learning, with that failure, and being able to take that and just make it into became successful down the line.
A through line of things that you've been talking about have been research. You've been researching things, researching. Tell me, the research has really helped you understand the industry, create the contacts, create the network, and kind of figure out what your roadmap was going to be. So can you talk a little bit about the importance that research has played in your success?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, because I'm entering into an industry that I didn't know anything about, when I first got in, I had to do a ton of research. It's pretty much you pay for what you don't know, right? So, some people go to school for, this type of education. I did YouTube University, and I did qualitative analysis. So I went to people who are actually the top 5% of where I wanted to be, and I asked them questions. How did you get here? And all of those different things, because I needed to know information about how do you put a story together. And it's funny, I took some classes over at NYU, because I know you went to NYU.
Yes, I am.
I took some courses over there, around storyboarding, animatics. And one of my professors, which I do appreciate, was one of the directors for Nicktoons. So he actually runs Noggin right now. And, he was one of the first people I pitched the story to. And he kind of laughed. He was like, "PB Soldier, what, peanut butter soldier, and all this stuff, right?" But then he saw the success of it. He kind of shopped it around Nickelodeon and everything, feedback or whatever the case may be. But the one thing that I took from that was I received the feedback. Like, I wasn't like, "Oh yeah, this is the best thing since sliced bread." I received it. I wasn't going to change the name or nothing, but now we are, in a whole rebranding. But I received the feedback and used it to improve the story, right? And then just kind of helped moving, taking it moving forward. So from the first issue to the issues that you see now, you see the writing actually gets better. And then when we get to Jazen's series, the writing was, a lot better, just moving forward. So when we do like a relaunch or whatever, you'll see the quality of, the writing as well as the storytelling, within this particular space.
So one of the things you said, and you said it a couple times, I just go and talk to people and ask them the questions. That's not an easy skill that people have. And you said you got out of your comfort zone to start doing that. I don't know if I've ever known you as shy, Naseed, but I'm gonna go with this idea for a second. But what is your advice for someone who just feels like, I feel intimidated talking to the top 5% or to someone that I admire? Like, how do you actually reach out to them? How do you make sure that you engage them in a quality conversation, etc.?
Well, most of the time, yeah, I saw that. Most of the time, and then here we go, we research, right? So I find out who these people are. And I mean, nowadays it's a little more accessible. You can find them on LinkedIn, you can do it. But if you actually do your research properly, generally these people are talking somewhere, right? And I would go to those particular conferences and then I would introduce myself. And when I introduce myself, I let them know what I'm working on. But, generally, I align myself with individuals that are doing what I'm doing. And they say, when you surround yourself, with a network of individuals that are, where you are, you absorb a lot of stuff. I mean, and that's what it is. I think you have to get out your comfort zone, especially for people. I mean, I think the fact that I had to train as an engineer. I was a school, like I was a teacher,
Right.
It allows me to be able to talk to, people a little more than the average person would.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you have a goal and you're writing it down, how are you going to attack that goal and achieve that goal? So I'm focused on the goal versus getting out of my own way to be able to talk about my insecurities of how I'm going to be received or everything like that, and then just being my genuine self. I think you got to be genuine. You got to be authentic. A lot of people don't have a lot of time. So you want to kind of be very direct in what what you're asking them for. I remember I was, the same individuals that I was reaching out to. It's like, could you be my mentor and everything? And it's like, I haven't really got time for all that.
Right.
But you got some questions, I can answer those questions for you.
Yeah.
So I had to learn those type of things, to have, those direct questions of what I want to know. And just kind of push forward with that.
Are you finding any full circle moments, meaning that there are young folks who are looking up to you as somebody and you're like, hey, Mr. Gifted or Professor Gifted, Brother Naseed, can you be my mentor? Can I pick your brain? Can I ask you a few questions? Are you seeing that kind of come to fruition?
Yes, actually, now that like I'm on these different circuits where I'm doing talks at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, I'm trying to get into Afrotech, this year. But I mean, and I've also did the teachers conference and stuff. So I just kind of just put myself out there, and just hopefully put out quality product. And for some reason, parents and people who know what I'm doing, they generally kind of like call me and just say, hey, I got this young person who wants to get into this industry, and they just want to get some advice or whatever the case may be. I've had mentors, growing up. Now all I look at it as is being able to pay it forward. So I'm very receptive to that. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I definitely could give you some feedback in the time that I do have.
Yeah.
And then if you have, direct questions or whatever, I'm able to kind of, work with you, around that and provide resources. Because that was what I had to find all of my resources. Now I just kind of give the resources out to people, and it's up to you to kind of, what you do with it.
Yeah. So I do want to just have some questions about the book itself.
Okay.
So I want to know a little bit about and I'm just going to show so that people can see. I think that similar to writing, like thinking about the words, when you're doing a graphic novel, a comic book, etc., the illustrations and the colors you use are extremely important. So did you and the artist decide, like, because this gives me a very dark vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It's Afrofuturism, which, so we
Yep.
can talk a little bit more about that. And then I'm going to talk about some elements of the comic that I see that are similar to, maybe thematically similar to some other
Mm-hmm.
comics and stuff that I've seen out there.
So, I mean, what we were trying to depict was a dystopian future where PB Soldier in this particular, I mean, and everyone is just the same world. So PB Soldier, who's one of the world's top hackers in this world, has just been able to top terror threat and had to work unofficially off of the books for the newly formed world government called the Establishment. As he is seeing a life that's not of his own, he's actually being hacked into by his ancestors while he's hacking into the world. And that's kind of like where the story kicks off from, where he's trying to get an understanding of how his past connects to the present and paves a pathway for the future. Um, a lot of this was a foreshadowing of what was supposed to be happening today. So we started this whole journey in like 2006, 2008. But the future that we are talking about is actually what's happening right now today. So that's why more people are really connecting with this, especially with this whole Trump administration and everything, and all of the stuff that he's doing and try to dismantle. Um, that's really kind of like the future that we were kind of talking about. And I mean, and that was pretty much it. So a lot of it was based in real things. We talk about the Patriot Act. We talk about stop and frisk, stuff that's affecting the Black and brown communities at a high level, but most worlds don't look at it from the hood, from the neighborhood level. They look at it from the larger political standpoint. And that's kind of like where PB Soldier kind of comes in, where he's uncovering some truths and now trying to figure out, what he's going to do and how is he going to impact.
I love that you said that, because this actually brings like big themes that happen in our community.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it really accessible even to, to students who may not be interested in reading and who feel maybe intimidated if they have to read large texts, but then they can relate to the characters, the pictures, and the shorter texts, and the things that pop out when it's about sound, like thud, boom, bam, and all that. So as an educator, tell me how that played into your thinking around making sure that this was going to be a book that was easily accessible, regardless of your reading level and regardless of whether or not you feel like you're a person who's interested in reading. I have thoughts about that. I think most people like to read, but about things that they're passionate about. But,
so we talk about accessibility, right? So from adolescence, you learn through pictures. And the thing that happens, especially when we talk about like STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is that it becomes more abstract. So that's why most, individuals kind of disconnect from that. So what I wanted to do is be able to make complex ideas simpler for people to understand. And like I do a lesson, like in physics, where I do a workshop on how Spider-Man taught me my first physics lesson, right? And I'll talk about momentum, impulse, Newton's first, second, and third law. But I use Spider-Man as an example. And when we talk about, entry points and stuff like that, that's where education comes in. Everyone can relate to Spider-Man. So now I have the, anticipatory set that people can relate to. And then because of that, now they can access the learning that goes along with it. And that's kind of like what we did with the graphic novel series, where we have STEM topics, between PB Soldier being a computer scientist or a computer hacker, Jazen being a research oncologist, who discovers a cure for cancer. All of these things are, something that you can see. And then, you have these compelling stories that makes it kind of cool to, want to kind of go into these fields, because that's like part of my whole personal mission to, develop and inspire the next generation of technology leaders, with this.
I love that. It's cool to be smart. Let's be blurs together, Black nerds. Yes. So before we go to audience questions, is there any passage from the book that you want to highlight, or anything in particular that you wanted to say that maybe I haven't covered yet?
Well, I'll pull something. Yeah, I'll pull something from Jazen's, because Jason, the one thing that we did, we kind of pushed a couple of boundaries with this, and so we infused poetry into Jason's story because uh, Jason, who finds herself after she, discovers the cure for cancer, finds herself laid, handcuffed, hand near death, handcuffed to a hospital bed, being questioned by authorities about the death of an anti-terrorism squad trooper on the Renaissance City Turnpike. She deals with a lot of trauma, and for her way to be able to deal with trauma is through spoken word or poetry. So we infused a lot of poetry within the Jason story, and generally I kind of infused that into this particular story. And I mean, besides, like I said, in the symbolism. So I like the fact that, with the symbolism, with regards to this whole thing, and like with Jason's story, as you can see, well, no, you can't see it from here, but let me do it.
Pop it up there.
Yeah, we pop it up there for you. We're talking about a rose that grew from the concrete, right? And we talk about something that's beautiful as a rose, but being, as delicate as a flower, but the the things, the trials and tribulations that you have to go through, the challenges in order to be able to pierce the ground and grow through concrete is the symbolism of her story and her path. And that's like something in her journey, that's something that, we try to illustrate throughout this particular story. And, PB Soldier, blacklisted, which is actually going to be the rebranding of PB Soldier. And that, kind of speaks to that in, the everyday person, and how we deal with, using the resources around you to be able to solve the problems, and, not only in your family, but in your community.
I love that. And actually, before we go to audience questions, um, this love of comic books, creating the stories originally off of the conversation with your son, has now really turned into a business. You have your own festival. Do you want to just mention just sort of the growth of the business and the ideation? And then what's next, and how can people find you?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, with all of this, I was going to Comic Cons all over the country, promoting the book, doing all these different things. And the one particular conference I go to is East Coast Black Age of Comics, which is ECBOC in Philadelphia. And I had to talk to the elder, Yummy, and just to ask him, like, look, my community doesn't have a place where we can celebrate Black heroes or Black creators. And, I just asked for his blessing. And then in 2015, that's when KimFest was born, where we celebrate Black animation, gaming, and comic book creators, and just kind of just celebrating year after year. And then last year, that's how we became part of ByteCon. Week and everything, being able to do that for 10 years, and now we're going into our 11th year, and then just being a part of ByteCon week again, that's super phenomenal. And then it just being a nexus of the creators of today connecting with the creators of tomorrow, in that in having a training grounds where they can learn to just not only create but innovate in these particular spaces, because we are some of the biggest consumers within these markets, and now we want to be able to not only just be consumers but be creators and innovators within these spaces.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Naseed. Any questions from the audience?
Oh, we got a hand up in the back.
How did you come up with the name Jazen?
Oh, Jazen. So Jazen actually was a play on words. So Jazen represents flower, so that's why means flower. Let me just say, and represents flower. So when we talk about the rose that grew from the concrete, we talked about Jazen's journey, and when we think about a flower, especially even like when we talk about a rose, right? A rose, is something beautiful to look at, something that smells really nice, but also has those thorns that could prick you, right? So that whole sides of, because she's a deadly assassin, and in this particular story, so even though you have your warm and gentle side, there's also a fierceness that comes kind of with it. And, and if you get too close, you may get pricked.
I love that. Yes. Yeah.
What's so to someone that wants to write a book, not a comic book, but I guess what's the main difference in the style of writing a comic book than like a traditional type of book style book?
So the question was, what's the difference between writing a traditional style of book versus writing a comic book, right?
Yeah, page a day, one in a month.
Yep.
I think traditional book maybe you do it in a month, but it seems like you like.
No. Well, so writing a traditional book, it would take like that entire year. So generally, authors who are writing books generally take about a year to kind of write those books. So if you did do a page a day, you would have 365 pages, which would be a novel. So I mean that formula still works for that particular writing. But the thing that is so versatile with the comic book style writing is that you're writing as if you're writing a screenplay, right? So you're directing, you're writing characters, you're doing dialogue, you're doing scenes, you're doing all of that. So that's why if you can write in formatted for a comic book, you could write, you could do screenplays, you could do playwrights,
TV
you could do
scripts.
movies, you could do you could do TV scripts, commercials, because in the essence, all of these particular medias have a storyboard. Even when you get down to video games also still has a story and a storyboard. So just understanding that. Now your novels of course aspect of it as well, because you have to put what's the illustrations are going to look like. You have to put details about that. So everything that you would see in the books that we've created, I've had total creative what do you call it, control over what those particular panels look like, right? And then of course my artists kind of execute. And shout out to Abel Garcia. I know I'm going to say the artist, Abel Garcia up in Barcelona, Spain.
Okay, look at this international
Oh yeah,
partnership. I love
yeah,
that.
definitely
I love
international.
that.
You want to be able to cross continents.
Anybody else? Yes.
Oh
Hello.
yes, you.
So in terms of generational wealth, we're always thinking about how we can pretty much prepare our children for the future.
Yes.
Because this I don't like to say common, but because this evolution of the book that you create,
Yes.
have superheroes look like this, is there ever going to be an opportunity for you to collaborate a story with your children that they actually put forth? Because I've heard what you say, you write a little bit here, you write a little bit here, you write a collaboration with your kids, and how will it look further going down the line? Is something you're going to say, you know what, my time has come to pass the time.
So I was so just for the audience, just to hear, how do I incorporate my children into the story and looking at generational wealth with that? So one of the things I've done, I've been very intentional throughout this journey. So my kids, since they were very young, and now my son, who is 21 years, will be 21 next month, has been with me pretty much like every step of the way, right? And I was very intentional of bringing them along. I didn't force them, because I actually tried to force them into sports and that didn't work out. So, I kind of, coached them along with this whole journey and process. So I incorporated them into the business aspect. So they would, they would pass out flyers. They would actually do the cashiering and all of this other stuff. They would do pitches and everything. That was one layer of it, but now, like my son, who is going into game design and animation, he wants to focus his lens on the actual composition aspect of composing music for these particular media. So now I'm giving him scenes, and I'm having him actually compose music for that particular scene. So he's still working, he's still, mastering that particular aspect of it. But, I'm making sure that I'm very intentional in doing that. And then, I give my son right now, because my daughter, I have a different focus for her. About story ideas, right? So I pitch a story to him, and I say, hey, well, what would you do? What would make this more interesting and everything? And then he kind of gives me that feedback and stuff. So as he is building his skill sets up, just being able to roll them right into everything that we're already doing. But I was just like very intentional about bringing them along the journey, so they can actually see all of the stuff that's happening. Now, my daughter was looking to go into filmmaking now. I thought she was going to be a doctor. Now she wanted to do filmmaking. And both of them, I swore they was going to just do something in STEM, but they are doing something in STEM. It's just a different layer of it. And
they're in STEAM.
Yeah, they're in STEAM, the STEAM aspect of it. Because my son, I used to take him to New York. He wanted to be an architect. I thought he wanted to be an architect. We looking at these buildings and all this stuff all the time. But now, I had to flip it. Now he's into gaming. So he's talking about world building and taking that architecture thing into to being able to build worlds.
I love that.
So now, but he's still using that same skill set of that. And I mean, the vision is for them to be able to take over, later on. But as they are developing and everything, I'm just trying to bring them along and just have them understand all aspects of it, of the business, and incorporate them into that. And my son is actually one of the characters in the story. So, I kind of brought him in early on. My daughter's still waiting for her character to appear, just like some of you out there, you're looking for that. So that's going to be written in. Don't worry, I got you, and I got you over there, so that's happening. But generally, that's kind of like a part of the, the journey and the legacy building that we're looking to do.
Before we take the next question, if there is a next question, I do want to just say kudos to you on that journey, because to figure out how the kids can incorporate their own passions into the work that you're doing is such a beautiful way to go about things, letting them go, explore, experience, experiment. And at times you're leading, but sometimes they're leading you, right? Yeah. They're giving you feedback, and this relationship and this security that you allow them to experiment, feel their feet out, feel what they want. It's a beautiful thing. So I just want to say kudos to you.
No, thank you. I even got a funny story. I remember I was at New York Comic Con one year, and I see Whoopi Goldberg. She's right there, but she got her security detail in there, right? And I wanted to just give her a book. I wanted to give her a book, but I wasn't able to get to her because of her security detail. So I sent my son in. I was like, here, give this to her. So he goes. I mean, he's probably like 8 or 9 or something at the time. He goes in there. He walks right by security. He hands her the book. She's like, oh, hey, little guy, whatever. She's like, yeah, my father wanted to give you this book or whatever. And he gives her the book. And, I guess she's celebrity. Signs the book and gives it back to him like he wanted her autograph or whatever the case may be. But but that's just like part of it. And, and I had a booth like right next to the place that she was at, and I just wanted her to come over and just see what we are doing and everything. But I mean that's just like part of it. And the one thing I will say about my son, he doesn't have fear. He never had fear like that. My daughter's a little more shy, but he never had fear. And, I give him a task and he'll go out there and he'll do it, and that's the part of the journey that, he just kind of does that. I mean, I took him to NBA Summer League, and, and he was like, oh, yeah, he's an NBA player. Go ahead. He just goes up there, takes a picture with him. Come to find out he was Dylan Brooks. I didn't even realize it was Dylan Brooks, because Dylan Brooks wasn't even he wasn't the guy. It was like around the same time Zion came into the league and everything. I didn't know who Dylan Brooks was at the time. But, my son, he about it, so I give him that. So kudos to him for that, but yeah, just not to have that fear, of being rejected and stuff like that, and just making an attempt, I think that's something that, young people today definitely need, especially if you're chasing your dreams.
Listen, Whoopi Goldberg is out there listening, remembering this story.
Yep.
How can her people get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah.
What is the contact information?
You could definitely at PBS Media Studios. My direct contact at Director Gifted, and Naseed Gifted on all other platforms. So PBS Media Studios at Director Gifted if you want to at Director Gifted, and Naseed Gifted my name.
I love that. Thank you so much, Naseed, for
No,
coming
thank you.
out.
No, thank you for
helping
having
us kick off BICON Week 2025 here in Miami. If you're here in Miami, South Florida, check out bicon.org to find out who's on the weeks-long agenda, what all the activations we got going on, and who's going to be at our conference. You don't want to miss it.
Oh, yeah,
thank
definitely.
you again, Naseed.
No, thank you, and looking forward to the rest of this BICON Week, man.
And thank you
Super
all
excited.
for tuning in. We appreciate you. Peace.
All right.